This version of the podcast is mixed in mono, but if you would like to listen in 5.1 surround sound, please visit ufocast.co.uk/prisoner for more details. This is episode 3, but we recorded it 9th, back in April 2022. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of By Hook or By Crook, the Prisoner podcast that Michael and I of the UFOcast are running. And this week we have a special guest to discuss this episode, Peter Zunitch. Welcome to By Hook or By Crook.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So, you contacted us through the website, I believe, when we put out a call for guests. So what was it, how had you heard of us in the first place, and what was it about doing a prisoner podcast that made you want to join in?
A little bit of a long story, but to make it real short, I've been a fan of the Tin Dog podcasts for ages, since Doctor Who came back, I guess. And then more recently, I have discovered both of you through the UFOcast, in which I had never seen UFO before, and now I'm watching it all the way through, and then I'm going to go back to the podcast and listen to the commentaries.
Fantastic. So, The Prisoner, what's your background with The Prisoner?
So, The Prisoner is a bit of a longer one. I used to see this show at 6 or 7 in the morning when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. I had no idea what it was. I didn't understand any of the story, any of the dialogue even. I just knew that I was fascinated by it. And I've stuck with it ever since. I've seen learn the ins and the outs and what it's all about. And then, as I got older, I got access to watching it again and again through reruns and everything. I eventually found somebody that was replaying it over here, and they had a little background commentary in between every episode, at the start and the end of every episode. And that really helped me and drew me in. And I realized I was not the only one perplexed about this show. I, was part of the status quo. So I felt a lot better. The problem is that all my friends who I know that like the show, I've already discussed it to death with them. And I have no one else to talk to about it. So when you guys said, hey, we're doing a podcast, this is like, I got to get in on it.
Well, welcome to the safe space.
Yeah.
I have friends now.
Yeah, welcome.
That's cool. Yeah.
Can I just say, something occurred to me about 2 days ago. Now, I know we've nearly recorded half of the entire series, but although we're calling it By Hook or By Crook, it did occur to me that although it's going to be known as that, it really is the UFOcast Does the Prisoner, which isn't as catchy, but that's kind of what it is.
That is what it is. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, as we speak, I'm still in the midst of recording my solo, the UFOcast as Captain Scarlet. So that is what that is called. So I've not even come up with something that works for that. So yes. I mean, what we tend to ask our guests, Peter, is what is it about the show that drew you in? You talked about being baffled by it. So why did you watch it, and why did you keep watching it? I guess initially as a kid, and then you've talked about coming back to it as an adult. What was it that brought you back to it as an adult?
That's a great question. I'm not even sure I'm prepared to answer it.
Honesty is good.
I have always been a big sci-fi fan, and this obviously has a little less sci-fi to it in the traditional sense. It's not an outer space thing. But on the other hand, I grew up to become a video editor by trade, and I love telling stories, probably because of this, but and other shows. But I think the dialogue in this show, the banter back and forth, I guess repartee you could call it, although I would never use that word. I don't. It's just going back and forth between the two concepts of, is this reality? Is this fantasy? It's just an amazing sense of storytelling that just drew me in and has kept me ever since. and I love the idea of playing with time and memory and all that stuff.
So you've got 17 episodes in front of you, and this is one that you go, yeah, I'll chat about that one. So what was it about A, B, and C that really sort of went, yeah, go on then?
That's a great question. A, B, and C has two things in it that really threw me for a loop in life in general. I can probably trace the idea that I wanted to be in film and television back to the one shot where he grabs the mirror and twists it and the room turns instead of the mirror turning.
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely mind-blowing at the time, and I still do.
Yeah. When I was at film school, well, I say film school, when I was doing my MA in media production, we had a guest lecturer, and they said, when you're making a series, you usually just have to go through the motions and make everything the way that it's supposed to be made. But in every show, you should have one F me moment where you film something and you make something that makes somebody, and it won't be a lot of people, but there'll be some people watching going, that was good. It's like if it's some of us, we're sitting there going, they did that in one take.
Yep.
And we notice, but general public don't. They don't care. They're just getting on with the plot. Or, oh my God, the sound design on that just got it there. And it's like a love letter to us because we're paying attention. So I totally understand what you're saying about this episode. I've actually got about 4 paragraphs written just on that shot. So I totally understand what you're saying. The way that end sequence is shot, I'm sure we'll cover it in a moment. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It does speak to you because you're sort of watching it and you go, okay, that works.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are other shots and other episodes and other ideas in this show. Oh, yeah. Many others that drew me in just the same. But I think, just to go back to your original question, this is also probably one of the first episodes that years later I remembered watching when I was young. I don't know why it stood out. Maybe it just was the day I caught it and it made sense. But this one was one of the first I remember watching.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense.
I mean, I would say that I'm in a similar boat in that when I first saw these on VHS in the 90s, we watched them slightly out of order because it just depended on which VHS tape we picked up next. But I remember this one being one that did stand out. And I'm not entirely sure why. But it is definitely one of my favourite episodes of the series. So really enjoying talking about it. I think you said there were 2 things, Peter. What was the second?
I think the other thing, like I said, the dialogue, but the acting in general across the board is phenomenal. It's such a montage of amazing people in this story, from number 2 to number 14. Madame Engadine is someone you will wish you were at a party with. Yeah. B is someone you want to have a dance with. It's just, A is the guy you want to, have a witty banter with.
Yeah.
It's just the characters in it. It's not only a great episode for characterization, but it's a great episode for women actors. There are some very strong female roles in this episode, and not many roles were like that in TV in those days. This episode stands out among all the others for having that. I didn't think about it then, but nowadays it's like so obvious that you wouldn't have had that back
No,
then.
you're right. I mean, as well as number 14, you've got A, B, and C, and only A is male, and D, which we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, or even the characters as they're discussing it keep going, well, who is C? And they keep calling it he all the way through, and that's just standard sort of how crap the English language is. But it is, like you said, it really does go, and we still notice because we've experienced loads of other TV from that time which isn't like this, and it just you go, yeah, this was good.
I have a question about that. I'd like your opinions on it. So C turns out to be Madame Engadine, but at that point, number 6 knows that his dreams are being manipulated.
Yeah.
So my question is, if he hadn't figured out the plot and things had gone to plan for number 2 and number 14, would C have turned out to be somebody else?
My money was on C being, because I'd forgotten who C was. My money was on C being, and this is another conversation we have to have in a second, the woman who was in the house in the episode where he gets to go home.
Ah,
you
right.
See?
Okay,
now,
right.
That's why I think this is in the wrong order for several reasons. But one of my bits of evidence for that is that he might have already met her when he was in somebody else's head, and now that he's back in his own head, it becomes part of a dream sequence. This is why she's appearing. But she could always be C. And there's the thing about in the opening credits, he doesn't say, I am the new number 2, because you've already seen him in the general. He just says, I am number 2.
He does.
So
yes.
I did not notice that.
Well, it struck me that he said that, and then I thought, and this is the thing, we haven't done the general yet. So I suppose this is slightly spoilery for people who are committed to prison.
I don't think they're going to care.
No, it's fine. But Colin Gordon will come back in a few episodes. We haven't recorded that one yet. So we will wait and see if he introduces himself as the new number 2 in that episode. But I think you're right, because one of the looming things over this episode, one of the things that I really enjoy about it, is that this is clearly a number 2 who is
at the end of his tether?
Yeah, he's perhaps running out of ideas. He knows that this is his last throw of the dice. He's impatient to kind of get results. And one of the pieces you talked about, the shot with the mirror, which, to be honest, I thought it was brilliant when I saw it this time, but it never stood out before. The thing that has always stood out to me about the cinematography of this episode is the red phone.
Yeah, it's a character in itself.
It's one of those things where and obviously it's the way the episode ends as well. Just the way that
it brackets the whole thing. It's at the beginning and the end. So yeah.
Yes, and just the way that is the cinematography of it. There's some very deliberate shot choices of where they're going to put the phone in the foreground, where they're going to put Colin Gordon in the background, and how the camera then moves as he comes into and out of it. And it's just this. I expect we get the same to some extent in Hammer into Anvil with another number 2 who's at the end of his and in both episodes we have this looming red phone that just spells doom for both of them, and it's delightful.
Or when you've got Gordon's face turning to camera and you've got Dee's face in the background on the projection screen, which they'll have had to do live, and they turn and you're like, that is such a great shot. And just watching it, you just go, yeah, that tells the story well. But if you think about the mechanics of how they have to do that, because we discussed this on the UFOcast where the Anderson people managed to figure out how to film TV screens, and no one else in the world knew how to do that up to that point. And as The Prisoner predates UFO, they had to do it optically. So when they're watching the Madame Ongadine's party on the video screen, there's actually an edit where they have to just do it. They have to do the crossfade with the video.
They're just watching
They're watching a blank screen.
A film projected onto a screen, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's
which
what
is
they're watching, which has been pre-recorded, and
so the timing on the projector and the screen allows the camera not to flicker. But when you know the mechanics of the lengths they had to go to make it just look like, they're watching a big screen.
Yeah,
it really, you go, actually, these people know what they're doing on a big level.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the phone for a second.
Oh, yeah, please.
The phone encompasses number 2. It's deliberately framed every time so that he is smaller than the phone. He is encircled by it. And then, like you said, when they're in the lab at the end, that's one of my other favorite shots. Again, another thing that probably hooked me on watching The Prisoner, making me say, I want to watch another episode, is when he walks up and in his dream, he opens the lab door and they turn
and they
to
look
see
up.
him walking.
That's so good. And you know what? As an audience member, you almost expect it to happen. Yeah. And you know, he's there. He's lying there. It's not a magic trick. He's there. Boring technical question, and we probably don't know the answer, but I'm sure someone can shove a message to us. can you inject yourself with tap water, and is that safe? Because that's what he seems to do. I'm going to pour this pink liquid away and replace it with this tap water, and no one's going to notice.
I thought about that too, and by no means a medical expert, but you'd probably be okay. I guess, we're mostly water anyway, but I wouldn't chance it unless I guess in his case it is a life or death situation.
Fair enough.
I mean, I suppose who's to say that the tap water isn't contaminated?
Well, it is, because that's what takes him out in the third time. He's like, I'm going to not drink my cocoa. Here's the water. Bye.
Now, you see that scene, I misinterpreted that scene for years. And I think it wasn't until I was listening to Stephen and Erica. So, because I thought what happened was he knows he's going to be drugged with the cocoa, so he pours the cocoa away, pours himself a glass of water, and then he pretends to faint. Now, I realise actually what it's supposed to be is no. He thinks he's outwitted them, and then they've put the drugs in his water. I think that's how you're supposed to read it. But I always read it that no, he's just pretending but
that makes sense.
Anyway,
I'm sure there's a line in one of the big finishes where he goes to drink some water, and number 2 says, "It never occurred to you that we could drug the water," and number 6 goes, "Oh no, it didn't," and So, but there's a nod to that in the audios on that one.
Knowing the village, they probably did both.
True.
Yes.
Okay, so...
I mean, that's the other thing, that watching this through as an adult, I never fully appreciated quite how much quote-unquote torture they put him through. And I think I think I've said this in another episode, which you may listen to in the future, listeners, that I think it's because he's such a strong character and that he seems to be largely unaffected from episode to episode by what they've done to him in the previous episodes. But it's pretty horrific, really, what they put him through. And obviously in this one, he gets drugged, he gets taken to this laboratory, he gets injected with some drug that may or may not kill him if it goes wrong.
You don't even see it at the beginning. The one of the early shots is straight out of Frankenstein. It's the body being wheeled in, dark and stormy night. And then number 6 is there on the counter. And you're like, okay, now we know where we are.
Yeah.
And then they're at the end of the room of exposition where they have to tell us what's going on.
Yes.
But it's a brave start rather than starting with, mechanically with, we're going to drug him, we're going to bring him here, or he's going to be wrestled to the ground. It's like, no, we've already done all that. Here he is.
Yeah.
Let's get on with the plot.
Yeah. And it works.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Weirdly, and I know I normally cover the Alex Cox thing at the end, but on this one, he's like, it's one of the most lackluster episodes. I'm like, Alex, what are you watching? It looks great. It really makes a load of sense. Maybe he's saying that because it doesn't give much to his theories or much to the overarching narrative that he's trying to build. But I was like, seriously, this is a great episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was on about. So
I'll give you 2 little bits of insight that this commentary that I mentioned. It was from public television, KETH, many years ago, back in the 70s or 80s. But they mentioned 2 important things. One is, in one of them he says, it never rains in the village. This is the only time we kind of get the hint of it actually raining. They hold umbrellas, they walk around, but this is the only time. And we don't actually see the rain in this one. We just see them coming in from the rain all wet. And another interesting idea is, I totally forgot what I was going to say.
That's fine. To be fair, I'd not noticed the rain either. I know it opens with the thunder noise and then him driving along the road, but that would be in England before he gets kidnapped.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. I'd never noticed that, but I cannot think of a single... That
is fascinating. I'd never thought about that before.
They always talk about a hint of rain or a chance of rain, a chance of storms, but it never actually rains.
Yeah. Can we discuss, because you won't know who this person is, or perhaps you do. This is what I needed to ask. Peter Bowles. Now, he's just died here in the last month or so. And there was a big outpouring of emotion on Twitter. People like, oh my God, I loved him in this and this and this. And of course, the prisoner people started putting pictures of A up. And it's the actor who played A. were you even remotely familiar with the actor who was playing A at all?
You know, it's funny. I know the name more than the face. But again, like I said, I'm not very good with actors and faces.
No, that's totally understandable. Because he's one of these people who got a break in comedy and could do drama, and he was one of these character actors who was always usually playing someone a bit posh, but apart from in his main role where he played someone who was deliberately not posh, but was still very well spoken. And that was To the Manor Born, which is what made him in this country as an ultimate household name. But he was already tremendously well known. And he was, I'd say, reasonably well loved as well. Like, whenever you saw him in something, you'd go, oh, I'll watch that. And it was just weird to see him in this. I know he was playing swarthy, mid-European bloke. But fair enough.
I mean, this is possibly a generational thing, Michael, but he is one of those people that I am aware of more than having actually seen.
No, fair enough.
I think I've seen maybe like one episode of To the Manor Born.
Right.
And I mean, he's almost unrecognisable in this because he's so young compared. Like, I think of him more in terms of like what obviously doesn't look like now, what he looked like more recently.
Yeah.
Because those are the kind of publicity stills that you kind of see of like, oh, Pete Bowles is in whatever drama. He's almost unrecognisable in this. He's very good, but I would say he doesn't have the cachet for me because possibly he was never in Doctor Who, so.
There is that. Yeah, but he is playing kind of the character that Roger Delgado used to get wheeled out to play. It was like, hello, do you have sort of strangely, vaguely foreign appearance? In you come. That kind of thing. So he was kind of almost your go-to man for that.
Yes.
Which...
Now, there's an interesting thing in the dream in relation to him, which only struck me this time. The party is in Paris.
Yes.
Right? And then they go for a little drive.
Yes.
And then he's
with lovely back projection.
Yes. And then he's like, you're in my country now. Now, either there's a well, I guess it's possibly just it's a dream and therefore you can kind of skip. But equally, I'm like, there's not that many countries. I mean, I guess, would it be Belgium or Luxembourg?
No, you've overthought this.
Oh,
he actually says in the episode, it's diplomatic immunity. When you're on the land of the embassy of a foreign power, like we're going to call it Russia or something, you're no longer in that country. You are officially in the country. Like that piece of...
you're saying that's the embassy, right?
That's the embassy he drives to, and then they have the fisticuff, this episode's definitive fisticuff moment on the grounds of the embassy, which is why number 6 is taking the mix, saying, oh, well, I love to travel, and what he's done legally is he's travelled to another country. What he's done actually is just gone for a bit of back projection drive.
Right. Good point. I had overthought it. You're correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That kind of relates to a bigger question about the village in general, is where is the village? There's all these different areas where it might be. And likewise, you also have a couple of these episodes where the village is deserted and he's the only one there. How did they do that? And I had a theory that maybe there are multiple copies of the village. And maybe they are in all of these locations. Maybe it's not just one village. You would be hard-pressed to get some of these done by any other means.
That is
Makes
a theory
sense.
I've not heard before. Because,
I mean, from a Disney point of view, you've got Galaxy's Edge in Los Angeles, and you've got it in Florida. And they're apparently built to exactly the same specs. But only one of them has got the Galactic Star Cruiser, where you can stay in a hotel and things like that. So, but the actual Star Wars land, which would be as fake as the village, is in 2 places at once.
Yeah, granted, it would be a little hard to fake mountains and things, but...
Yeah, but are they real mountains?
Right.
So if you're faking something, it's a fake.
Yeah.
So, or perhaps do you just find, specifically, you need somewhere on the coast and you need some mountains, and that's all you need before you build your village?
Well, even then, you do see the mountains, right? There's the opening shot in Arrival where it pans across the mountains. Yeah. But in Many Happy Returns, you clearly see that it's on a beach, on an island.
Yeah. And in reality, it's in a kind of little nook of the sort of underarm of a peninsula.
And at some point, there's a direct way to get on a bus or a whatever back to London.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess that's interesting. We forgot to ask you this question at the top of the show when we were talking more generally about The Prisoner. But now I suppose is a good time to ask it, given that you've been putting forth a theory. Broadly speaking, how do you interpret The Prisoner? What is your understanding of now, having watched it however many times? What is your understanding of what's going on, or does it matter?
Again, I'm going to call out that commentary that I saw. It probably biased me in many different ways, but one of the biggest revelations that came through in that is one of the guys there postulated that, it's probably not a new theory, that all of this is taking place within the prisoner's head as he's driving in the car on his way to resign. What could happen when I go to resign? What are they going to do to me? Are they going to make me disappear? How am I going to resist that? Are they going to kill me? Are they going to whatever? And, there are some little snippets you could say that the fact that it begins and ends with him driving in the car could support that theory. I love that theory. I think it's a great idea. So where is the village? It's in his head. It's just an amazing concept. On the other hand, there's a little part of me that says, I would almost be upset if this wasn't really happening. I love the idea that somewhere there's this technology and somewhere there's people who cannot escape from their secret life.
That makes, but all of that argument makes total sense. I've not come across the idea that he's driving. I've come across the idea that he's dying and it's all in his head during some sort of
that's interesting.
Life flashing before him moment, but it doesn't really give a nice bit of narrative.
That's what's
closure
happening
to me.
That's what's happening in The Night Garden, Michael.
What?
Have you not heard this theory before?
With Iggle Piggle and Tink. What?
So, are you familiar with In the Night Garden, Peter?
He won't be.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to say no.
Derek Jacobi's masterpiece.
In the Night Garden is a CBeebies show, so it's aimed at, 5-year-olds. And it begins and ends with this character in a boat going out to sea.
Iggle Piggle.
Ostensibly going to sleep. And then it cuts to the Night Garden, where most of the episode takes place. The theory is that the Night Garden is his fevered dream as he's dying of exposure in the boat.
I'm guessing as a 5-year-old, you might not have that reading.
No, you won't. This is just grown-ups kind of going, we're deathly bored of watching this show with our kids, so this is the theory.
It's terrified grown-ups going, oh my God, the Pinky Ponks are coming to get us, right? I can't sleep at night without thinking of those stupid birds squealing.
Yes.
Sorry, I've been there. I now have a 13-year-old. I once had a child who was...
And there's also the theory that all the animals in Bing are being farmed for their meat. But that's another...
I've wrote this thing down and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to find it somewhere. But honestly, it sounds like my morning commute.
Don't bother. The only thing that makes it vaguely bearable is the fact that Derek Jacobi is the narrator. It was something of a coup for them getting to him.
The master is controlling it.
But yeah, I quite like... I like the theories of it's all in his head. But equally, I agree with you, Peter, that I would be disappointed if ultimately the answer is something other than no, this is happening in the world somewhere.
It would just kill some of the spark.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. At the risk of quoting my all-time favourite movie of all time, Brazil, I want to talk to you about ducts.
Ducts? Oh, ducts. Right, okay. Yeah. I see where you're going with this.
I should have said that, but yeah, right. Okay, there's two things. One, this proves that the village is not 100% designed to break number 6. Because if the village was designed just to break number 6 and not other agents and keep their eye on other agents, he would be being observed all the time especially when he goes for a walk around the world of the secret lab and follows number 14 and goes, oh, look, there's a secret lab there. Oh, what's this? It's a duct. Big enough for me to climb down, right, and then enter and have a lovely silent, which, to be fair, is beautifully shot and greatly acted because there's nothing said for a good few minutes where he investigates, puts it all together, and then goes, all right, lads, let's sort this out. You can see all of the working out. You can see everything. But if you've got the prisoner on in the background, all you've got is a bit of atmospheric music and silence as he figures this out. But it's the ducts are big enough for someone to climb down. And they also don't see him go in there. And the police should be following him. So that was me talking about ducts.
The cameras are on the other side of the hill.
Works for me. That's fine. Let's go with that.
Yes, I mean, I think that's a general. I don't want to say weakness, but obviously in a village where it's total surveillance is supposed to be happening. There are plenty of times in other episodes where he goes unobserved. Though I suppose there are also plenty of times where they go to the control room and go, I want to see what number 6 is doing now, and you're like, well, yeah, clearly.
Surely that should be somebody's job.
Well,
it should be Ronnie. Number 4,
you kind of feel
number 209. Yeah.
They don't have the staff to kind of permanently monitor everybody.
Which does indeed lean it towards being run by the British. There's just not enough staff in. Oh, who's in charge of this? Oh, I don't know. He's on a tea break. Oh, I'll just get him in. Who was watching number 6? Oh, God, the boss is coming. Look busy.
There is that dialogue by number 2 where he says, we don't seem to be seeing a lot of each other. And number 2 says, I haven't seen much of you. Number 6, I haven't seen much of you.
Yes.
Implying that he's being watched.
Yeah. Yes. That's a lovely line.
Right. Okay, now, right. Obviously, we're bombing through this. That makes total sense. But you mentioned the mirror shot earlier, which was lovely. Can we just quickly discuss, because I've got a few notes about the straightening of the mirror and the angles and everything? Because Luke's the expert with music. What's up with the music at the party in the C segment? Because as far as I'm concerned, that's straight out of Austin Powers. Right? And that angle, because the party starts off with, and it looks, because it's about the same time that they'd be watching it in the UK, like an episode of Batman. It's all Dutch camera angles, and, it's like, oh, we're at a party, and you almost, it's not, because all the rest of the parties are shot perfectly normal, straight on, like an episode of Danger Man, or whatever. It's shot perfectly ordinarily, and it builds. But once C's in the picture, and apparently number 6 can lucid dream, which leads more credence to his potential minimal psychic powers argument, but he can lucid dream, which is dead useful for this, as opposed to, oh no, I haven't taken the medication. I wonder what's going on in number 6's head. Oh, he's dreaming he's on the top of a cliff with some vegetables. What's going on? He actually has to be able to control his dreams to a certain extent. So we're in there.
And because he just dream. Yeah. Normally, before they interfere, he's just dreaming about resigning over and over again.
Yeah, over and over again. Which is, again, weird and lends itself more to the whole near-death experience thing. So he's having those dreams, and then we enter his version of the Madame Gongadin's party, which does sound like somebody from episode 1. These are the Gongadin people. But Jar Jar Binks' mate. Right. I do ramble.
That was quite the digression, Michael.
It was. Anyway, sorry. Back to the film where it was shot. And then he straightens the mirror and we get back to normal things.
Yeah.
Although he's still none of this is first person.
No.
Which if I was making this, I wouldn't be able to step away from that. I'd be like, right, we're in his dream. This would be the episode you could film without him being there, because you could legitimately have shot everything from his point of view looking out of his eyes at the party, and it would have been like an early version of Peep Show or something. Which
you would have missed some great acting, though.
we genuinely would, because he's very happy at these parties. Patrick does seem very relaxed, giving some lovely performances. So then everything's off kilter. He thinks that he's seen B, but he hasn't. He straightens the mirror as number 14 and number 2 get to re-enter the dream. So as an audience, we're watching that. So again, as always, overthinking it, really not a problem.
I got you covered on this.
Yeah, go for it.
So here's I've been thinking about this a long time, and it's probably one of the reasons I wanted to do A, B, and C in general. Okay, so he replaces most of his drug with water, right? But there's still some drug in there. So he's still under the influence a little bit. That's going to allow him to get that lucid dream, right? But it's not fully taking effect, and neither can he fully control it, which is why everything's twisted. He's trying to get control. It's trying to take control from him. His mind is all messed up at this point. And when he grabs his temples and twists it, you see the camera go with that. Another amazing shot that leads into the mirror. When he finally grabs the mirror and straightens it out, it's a dreamy party, right? He grabs that mirror and he turns it. All of a sudden, the room is fixed. He is now in control of his dreams. He has overtaken the drug at that point. And everything from there on is totally him manipulating the scene.
So that's the visual representation of him gaining control. That makes total sense.
I think that I'm prepared to go with that.
Yeah.
You talked about the music, which on the Prisoner album, which I don't have to hand. That's one of the library tracks. I forget what it's originally called, but obviously, as far as the Prisoner's called, that track is called "Dreamy Party." It's one of my favourite tracks of the whole show.
Love it.
Alongside, I will talk about this in the future. Number 6 chop. Oh no, we had it last episode, didn't we? Number six chops down the tree. Yes, which occurs in Chimes of Big Ben, which we did last time. So, and I think those listeners who remember Tachyon TV will recall that Tachyon TV used to use "Dreamy Party" as.
That's it. That's it. It's been going through my head all day.
Did you not remember where you'd heard it from?
I've heard this so many times.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God for that.
That's where you've heard it, Michael. Tachyon TV used to use it. But I absolutely love it, and it's because it's on the albums that were released about 20 years ago now, which makes me feel old. It's the penultimate track before the closing theme on disc 1. So you bring those first 3 episodes of music to a close with this. I'm not going to do it now, but it's just so delightfully fun to listen to, and you want to be at that party at that point.
Isn't it funny how music can actually draw you in like that and remind you of a show or something? The music in this is absolutely phenomenal. It's perfect for this. But it's kind of like we watch, we'll watch a YouTube video or whatever, and we have our favorite YouTubers, and they use the music that YouTube allows you to use, and it's all rights cleared and everything like that. And then when you watch another video and someone else uses that same music, you're like, blasphemer! You can't steal that music from our favorite podcast.
It gets worse. Hang on. Sorry. There's a game called Fable, which was on the Xbox, and it was like Fable 1, 2, 3. I'm sure there might have been a 4th one. And it was great. We played it loads. But the music on that is the music from, I think it's either Four in a Bed or one of those daytime Channel 4 things. They've reused it, and you're sort of sitting there watching this really sort of lighthearted, almost semi-documentary thing. But all on the back of my head, it's just going, that's Fable. Why am I not wandering around in a medieval costume with a sword at this point? So, yeah, you associate library music with things, and yes. You're so right.
It's funny to me. I've recently started watching Out of the Unknown, which is a 1960s anthology series from the BBC. And the second episode of that had, so in my brain, it's the music from the moon base in Doctor Who, which is not even the first time that Doctor Who used that music. As I've kind of gone back into the Hartnell era. The moon base was a very early experience for me. So it's not even the first time Doctor Who used it. And then obviously it was used in other kind of 1960s shows. And it's just really weird because it momentarily takes you out of the show because you're like, no, this is not the music for this. And
it's so recognizable too.
So recognizable, yeah, so recognizable. I think it's called. Is it called Space Adventure or something? Cross been lots of kind of 60s things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Tachyon TV is the only other place that I've regularly come across Dreamy Party. But if it ever did turn up somewhere else, you'd be like, no, this is we should be in number 6's dream at this point. Yeah,
I'd totally convinced myself it was either in Batman or in Austin Powers at a Dreamy Party. And it was until you said Tacky on TV, it just all makes sense.
Yeah.
God, I
Just
loved
to,
that podcast. It was so good.
Add one other little side note here. You talked about Batman with the tilted rooms and everything, the Dutch angles. I once asked my older brother when I was young, why do they shoot it like that? He said, because thieves are crooked.
Makes total sense.
That's brilliant. Yeah, you talked earlier, Peter, about strong female roles. I want to talk about number 14. She's not the only number 14 that we will come across in the series. I think it's one of the numbers that gets reused most often. And number 6, in his conversation with her, even alludes to the fact that number 14 was a different person the previous week. I think she's a brilliant character. It's weird how the episode almost makes you root for the villains, because it's kind of told from their perspective for the most part. That I don't know. Well, maybe you'd experience it differently, but certainly watching it, you almost want them to succeed, because maybe as a viewer you want answers too, and so you're like, oh wow, yeah, we want to find out why he resigned. And it's like, yeah, Colin Gordon, he's the one that's kind of on the line, and he's the one that's kind of badgering her, and you're just like, no, just let her get on with her job, like, because she's clearly a competent doctor. She's the one that actually, he couldn't do anything without her, and she's just this very strong presence throughout, who's completely
and he
unflappable.
keeps threatening her. Why does he keep threatening her? It's like, oh yes. Well, I haven't even tested on animals yet. Doesn't matter. Bring it in. What? He's terrible. But number 6 is clearly giving him an ulcer because of all that milk. And when you see, it's really going to annoy me now. The guy with the mustache, number 2. The one who's in Department S. Jason King.
Peter Wingard.
When Peter Wingard comes out, and he's all kind of in his judo type silk dressing gown, versus what Gordon looks like when he's just had a bad night's sleep and he comes out of his little ball going, oh, for God's sake, it's another day here, seriously. And he is worried about being fired, because his version of being fired would probably be fired, and that's not what he wants.
Yes.
But he's just another incompetent number 2, just trying to get his job done. That's all he wants. And then he gets tricked into this incredible end thing, and it's just so nicely done. It really is.
I think 14 has the potential to be a very flat character. If it weren't for one specific line where, what does she say? We all make mistakes. Sometimes we have to. Yeah. And all of a sudden you realize there's a reason why she's doing this that's not necessarily, I'm just a bad guy. And it may even play into the idea of why 2 is harshing on her. Maybe she has no choice to do this. Obviously, she's somewhat willing, but there's something there that's not strictly normal. She's not just a villager. She's not just, one of them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it follows up from the line from last episode where number 6 says to number 2, does it occur to you that you're just as much a prisoner as I am? Yes. And he says, yes, we're both lifers. And there's the scene where number 6 confronts number 14 and does the whole kind of like, well, last week number 14 was
an old lady in a wheelchair.
Old lady in a wheelchair. So you're new and you're one of them. Like, he immediately picks her out as being one of them, one of the warders. But equally, we don't know why she's there. But as you say, there are hints of she's not there because she wants to be there. She's there because this is where her life has led her to through whatever mistake she might well have made, and she's just making the best of it.
There's definitely more to her that we're not privy to.
Yeah. Can I just say, injecting the stuff into the wrist was probably one of their mistakes, because I get the odd injection every so often and have blood taken, and when you've had cannulas in. If it's sort of around here, you notice it and it hurts. and it kind of you spend a few days going, that really knacked. But if you've got sort of blood going, if it's just an injection, if they put it into your arm, sometimes you might notice, but you might not. I suppose there's quite a lot of fluid going in. So, maybe the wrist was a good idea. I don't know, but the big bruise, maybe they should have covered it up.
I love that line where he shows it to number 2 and he's like, someone who didn't have anything to hide would have asked me where I got it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another strange one is that if you're really trying to maintain a sense of fantasy versus reality and hide the truth, why would you bother buying flowers right outside the door of the person who you're trying to hide from?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, yeah. It's. Are you suggesting that actually she wants to be found out? That
you know what?
Ultimately,
I didn't think of that.
she does that because she knows that he'll follow her. Because that's the other thing is that number 2 never knows that she's made a mistake. Number two doesn't know that number 6 saw her briefly. She deliberately hides that from him. So as far as he's concerned, he doesn't know that's happened. He doesn't know that number 6 has then had this conversation with number 14, and then neither of them know that number 6 has then followed her and infiltrated the base.
Well, until he tells number 2, I have a favorite doctor.
Ah, right. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good point.
But yeah, I'd never considered the fact that she did it deliberately. It's probably bordering again on fan theory, but that's an interesting concept.
I mean, it's only just occurred to me when you said that. You're like, well, why?
Yeah.
It has to happen for plot reasons because the plot requires him to find out.
That's what I thought it was. That's why.
Yeah.
But actually, it is a bit odd that
So.
Maybe I suppose. And we'll talk about this in a few weeks when we do Checkmate, which revolves around the idea of can you pick out who are the prisoners and who are the warders? That maybe she's just arrogant. Maybe it's an arrogance born of being one of the warders.
She knows either way she's going to be out of there in 2 days because she's only got 3 lots of medicine.
Do we know that? Yeah. Is she just? We don't know. Is she just in the village just for this assignment? I don't know. Or has she been sent there for
We
the
do know there's
term?
a massive R&D section in the village underground, and eventually we see a lot more of it. But we do know that we always suspect it's going to be underground, and then they wheel people up, and now it's your turn for the weird science, and it's. Whose turn is it this week? Like a weird science lottery. You can do that. So maybe that's why she gets brought in from the powers that be to kind of do her weekly stuff. So
yeah,
maybe she isn't going home. She's just going back to her office. So when I was growing up, when I was slightly younger than I am now, Star Trek Next Gen was on, and it got to a point about season 4 when you were watching it going, okay, this one's a mind episode. Yep, it's a mind episode. Yep, they're in the holodeck again. Yep. Oh, they're on a planet. And Star Trek basically fitted into those 3 categories. That was it. And you could kind of sit there going, yep, mind episode. And that's fine. But this one, it's a mind episode and a holodeck episode. Because it takes place in his head, but you get to see it and it gets to affect reality. So these are the groundworks for some major science fiction staples that kind of develop and evolve. Develop and develop. A new word coined today through narrative, which is nice. So I just kind of caught myself thinking, oh, is this a mind episode? Not quite. And that was just nice to think about. So I have rambled now, as always.
Well, no, you did remind me of the thing I forgot twice now. One of the interesting things brought up about this episode is that it is one of the only times they actually make a physical attack on the prisoner. All the others are psychological or mental attacks. This is the only time they attack him with drugs and, they literally assault him in this one. I think it's one of the things that make it stand out as a desperation move by number 2.
Yeah. Going, I mean, we touched on it a bit earlier. Going back to the whole kind of, it's not from his perspective in the dream thing.
Yeah.
I've realised lots of things through being married. And I don't know. I don't know. I can't assume that this is the same for you guys. But and it's not just about marriage. It's like when you're in a relationship with anybody for any length of time, and you talk about the deep stuff, or just the kind of random normal stuff, and then you realise, oh, hang on, that perspective that I had on life, that I just thought was common to everybody, is not. And one of those things is dreams. And this is just because, like, and I can't remember how it came up. It must have just come up when I was telling my wife about a dream, or she was telling me about a dream. She's never herself in dreams, and she constantly hops from one perspective to another she constantly changes character within her dream. And I was like, oh, okay, because I'm always me, and I'm always dreaming from my perspective. Michael's nodding at me.
Yes,
Peter,
I must admit, I'm thinking that's prime.
But it's interesting, like how we perceive that is based on our own thing of like, well, how accurately is this portraying a dream? Well, it's not portraying a dream as I experience a dream, because we're seeing him, right? But actually, this could just be the way that whoever directed this or whoever wrote this dreams. That their experience of being in a dream is that they can see themselves from the outside.
Whoa.
And I don't know, you'd have to kind of go back and ask, it was Anthony Skeen who wrote this one, and go, well, is that how you normally dream? Like, in that you see yourself from the outside? You know?
It's kind of, yeah, now that you mention it, I kind of feel like, yeah, I always dream that I am me, but there are parts in my dreams a lot of times where I will see myself as a third-party person.
There you go. See?
Right.
How that happens, I don't know, but, you know.
No, yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Welcome to the Philosophy Podcast.
Yeah. What does your dream say about you?
I think we can just say that this is, even among the prisoner, for me, this is a unique episode. And it's one that, like I said, has stuck with me all my life. It's a great episode for, like you said, music, for acting, for characterization. The dialogue is through the roof in this one, in my opinion. Maybe there's a little less interesting sets than I would like, but it's totally fits the situation. I just think it's great all around. And it's, I understand why this show has made it through the ages. I mean, it's above 50 years and we're still talking about it. My math might be off, but it's, you know what I mean.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. 55 years as we record this. Michael, anything else from your pages of notes?
I think we've covered most of it, we really do. I'm sure there was something, but I cannot remember for the life of me. And you know what? That's fine.
I do have a fun outtake, though.
Oh,
I'll tell you one bit of insight. At one point, you mentioned before, he's repeating his memory of resigning. You know, like he's not conventional, number 2 says, or number 14 says. And number 2 says, sometimes I think he's not human. And number 14 replies, it's an anguish pattern. So I thought, hey, let's be philosophical and psychological and look up what an anguish pattern is.
Okay.
Right? And I look it up, and the only result, the first 200 results on Google is, it's a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's no psychological thing for an anguish pattern, but there is a card called Anguish Pattern in the card game Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know what relevance that has to anything, but there you go.
That's okay. Oh, you're right. Okay. I've got one note that I hadn't covered in the whole thing, apart from who was in Doctor Who. And this is, he was actually going on holiday. That was that's all we've discovered.
We haven't talked about the end, have we?
No, we really should have.
Yes, I mean, obviously he's saying that on one level. He kind of says that because he wants to tell them. He wants to kind of say, "Well, I I wasn't selling out, because you thought the whole premise of the episode is that number two's theory is he was selling out, and he wants to find out who he was selling out to.
Yeah.
And the opening titles do suggest every week that he was packing to go on holiday. And I like to think that is what he was doing, but equally, he reveals that because he knows they're watching. So
I thought it did occur to me
on?
while I was driving to work today, right? Perhaps the spies have got a really bad HR department and no one likes filling in the holiday request forms, and it was easier for him to resign in order to have a holiday than just to fill in the form saying I'd like to go on holiday. And I think that has just sorted the whole of the prisoner out, and we no longer have to discuss it anymore. And that's a sort of nonsense in my head as I drive to work. So,
well, to go off on another tangent.
Yes, please.
The most recent episode of Captain Scarlet that I've watched is called Codename Europa. And the Mistron agent in this particular episode is a university professor. And he just rings up his department and goes, I'm going to be going on holiday. And then they clearly ask him on the other end how long. And he's like, oh, for a while. he just, or something to that effect. Essentially he's like, I'm going off to do Mistron things. So I was like, well, I mean, clearly in his world, he can just go off and do whatever. Probably in the name of research.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Surely, as a secret agent, he could kind of wangle a mission, which meant he could kind of spend a week on a beach. James Bond seems to be able to do that reasonably easily.
Shall we do our traditional things?
Yes. Okay. So, shall we play Spot the Doctor Who actor? There is one. There's basically one, and then there's another who had another role in Doctor Who, which is more of a kind of interesting fact rather than you'll have spotted him. So we throw it open to our guest first. Peter, did you spot an actor who's been in Doctor Who?
I did not. If I had to guess, it was number 2, but I'm sure I'm not correct.
Michael, is he correct?
You are indeed correct. It is number 2.
No! Now the question is where?
Well, you've probably seen him as a drawing.
You probably have seen him as a drawing, yes.
Yeah.
He was in Doctor Who in the same year that he was in The Prisoner, interestingly enough. Let me just check.
He only died 5 years later.
Yes, this was broadcast in October 1967, and Colin Gordon was in The Faceless Ones in April 1967. So, very similar time of his career, towards the end of it, as Michael has said, quite sadly. But obviously, in The Faceless Ones, he is on black and white videotape, and only 2 of those 6 episodes survive. And in this, he's on nice, pristine 35mm film.
I have only ever seen a really scratchy VHS transfer of a telesnap recreation of The Faceless One. So
there you go.
Surprised that I
well
got
done
him,
for getting through it. Yeah.
Yes. I can heartily recommend the animated version. It really does bring the story to life. I think it's the episode 4 cliffhanger is blooming amazing. Even if you know what it's going to be, it's a really good. And Colin Gordon is, I mean, to be fair, like Colin Gordon is in the 2 surviving episodes, he's brilliant. Like he plays the exasperated commandant of the airport who has rings run round him by the Doctor and takes a while to be persuaded that there's an alien threat going on. Yes, he's just very, very fun to watch. Also, the other thing I know Colin Gordon from, I don't know if you know this, Michael, is an episode of Tony Hancock where he's stuck in a lift along with several other characters and Tony Hancock.
That's ringing a bell.
Very, 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 very good.
Yeah.
I suppose there's an element of like typecasting in that he plays the kind of authority figure very well, but there's I guess there's nuance to that. So yeah, well spotted both of you. Number 2, Colin Gordon in Doctor Who, and he will return in The Prisoner in a few weeks' time when we cover the General. The other person to mention, just because of the passage of time, is Peter Braham, who plays a thug in this episode. I'm guessing one of the ones that beats him up. Was the stunt coordinator on 3 episodes of Series 2 of Modern Doctor Who. So he coordinated stunts for like School Reunion and episodes like that. So So, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of the people who play thugs and the kind of the sort of bit parts in The Prisoner are more stunt people, and so obviously they've had massive long careers in the British film industry. And
how old was he when he was doing School Reunion?
I will look him up for you again just to kind of check.
I'm not complaining, I'm all up
He was born in 1936. Oh, in fact, he died. He died in 2006. So he died the year that at the age of 70, he died the year that he did stunt coordinating on Doctor Who.
A 70-year-old stunt coordinator.
Yeah.
See, that's a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
I always thought Toby Haydock should actually write a sitcom, either a sitcom or a drama called Action by Havoc, and then you've got all of the old Havoc people coming out of retirement to rob places, and it would just be brilliant.
So his last job was stunt coordinator on Life on Mars, which finished broadcasting after his death. So there you go.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to brag or anything, but Thug number 3 was going to be my second choice after number 2.
And you would have been correct.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much.
You've been a brilliant number 3 this week.
For joining us,
thank
Peter. Next week, we have Free For All, which we've already recorded with Swithin. And then the week after that, we have Schizoid Man, which we've also recorded with my brother.
Oh.
So we've now recorded, completely out of order, the first 5 episodes of The Prisoner, plus several others from later in the run. So the next one we have to kind of slot in that we haven't done is The General. So more Colin Gordon coming up for us, more guests lined up. But for now, I guess, we will leave the final line, as ever, to Michael.
Be seeing you.